Okay, today we're doing the oil change on the 2021 Traverse. To do this today, we're going to use the following things. We got our Fram PH10575 oil filter. I'm using 6 quarts of synthetic oil. Of course, a pan to catch all the oil in that can hold at least 6 quarts. Filter, bunch of paper towels, gloves just for ease, 15mm socket and wrench, and then a strap wrench for taking the oil filter loose. Very helpful to have. Make sure if you have one that it's sized for that oil filter, because they're kind of on the tiny side, in my opinion. This has the V6 and some basics. It's SAE 5W30. The manufacturer says that there is 6.02 quarts inside there. And so we're going to be replacing the oil with full synthetic, because that's what the manufacturer recommended, full synthetic. As a tip, make sure everything in here is nice and cool. I know they want the oil to be warm when you drain it because it drains quicker, so oil change places especially like it warm. But down here you have some hazards. So you have a fan. Never put your fingers inside the fan, right? Make sure the car's off, of course. But then your battery's right there. So then the key thing is that this is your exhaust manifold setup right here. So this guy is going to be extremely hot if the car was running. Here's your oil dipstick right here, and what I'm looking at is right down there. Let's get some more light in here. That is the oil filter, that guy right there. I've already loosened this guy, but there it is. Take it off. You're gonna need an oil filter wrench to take this guy off. General rule of thumb is when you put them back on, you go till it's snug and then a quarter turn further, but they naturally tighten as the engine's in operation. And then of course it's up against the alternator, which is awesome. I had this one out a little earlier, then I decided to make the video on it, so sorry. So this is a AC Delco. This is the GM original part right here. And we're going to go back over here. I am going to replace this with a Fram, because I have good luck with Frams. This is an Extra Guard PH10575. And the key thing when you're working with oil filters, you want to make sure that the threads and the base diameter are the same. The height, you'll always run into some difference per manufacturer. So don't worry too much about the height difference, very slight. And then the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to fill this guy about 3/4 of the way up just to make installation easy. And I'm going to use some motor oil, wet the threads, and then wet the seal. At the same time, take some of this. Same time, I've taken some paper towels, and I've gone down in here, and now I'm going to clean off that whole setup where the oil filter was sitting. And then, if you're about to start this at home, make sure, of course, you take a drip pan and put it directly underneath the car. Otherwise, you will get oil all over the place. All right, put my oil pan down here underneath the car. And then if you look underneath here, front and center, really easy. Thanks, GM. There's the oil pan plug right there. So we're gonna put the pan directly underneath it. Make sure that's centered. And the next thing we're gonna do is pull that guy out. See if I can get enough leverage on this. That using my other hand. Again, no car on jacks here. Oops, sorry. And to get the slip off. Okay, keep in mind, I haven't even lifted the car up yet. It's still just sitting on the ground at normal ride height. Paper towels, always keep them handy. I'm wiping down this cross member right here. This is where the oil filter came off from earlier. It's dripping a little bit down there. So it's good to keep that close by. And now, I'm going to pull this guy out. I'm going to make sure the pan is closest to, because it's going to want to go out a long ways when I pull it. And you keep your hand on top of the plug like that. That way the oil is free to drain underneath. Hopefully you don't make too much of a mess when it finally comes out. It's almost there. There we go. Just like that. We'll find out exactly what we got going. Okay. That's your oil plug right there. See that black ring right there? That's a gasket. That's a seal. So some oil filters, if you buy a higher end filter especially, they might come with a new seal. I remember on the Hyundais, they came, you would buy a brass ring and put it in there. But these are typically okay to see, to reuse from time to time. But it's definitely one of those things, after 1 or 2 oil changes of doing it yourself, you're going to want to replace that guy. If it's even replaceable. You know what? That might be that might be part of it. Not quite sure, actually. Okay, this guy's starting to dribble down there. And for oil changes, you could sit here and wait a long time for this. In fact, if you want, go inside, make yourself a sandwich, do whatever you need to do and come back, and this will still be dribbling down like that. There's a lot of surface area inside the pan. But once it gets down to a little tiny thin stream and just starts dribbling out and making noise, just go ahead and put the bolt back in there. And then you're going to want to put a little bit of lubrication back around that surface to make sure your O-ring seats back. And we're just going to run that guy down. Hopefully I'm not explaining this to people and I have to say lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. But in case I need to, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. In other words, counterclockwise, loose, clockwise, tight. Be very careful about moving this guy because it is full. And those little sloshes cause it to go everywhere, just everywhere when you do that. Clean up a little spill there. And then we'll tighten this guy back down. There's an exact torque reference that this thing has to go back down to. I'm going to put it right about there, though. All honesty, I'm not sure what it's supposed to be torqued to. I just kind of put the same effort into it it took me to get off of it. And that's about it. If you know what the torque value is, go ahead and comment on the video. Let everybody know what that torque value is, but honestly, I don't know what it is. Okay, we're ready to put the oil filter back on. And the system measurements, so the 6 quarts, includes the oil and the oil filter. You want to pre-fill the oil filter because if you don't, the engine will start up and there'll be this big air bubble in the system, and your engine will run for a while with no oil whatsoever until this guy fills up, and which during time you could collapse the element on the inside and damage it and then pretty much destroy your engine. So here's the oil I'm using. It's a synthetic 5W30 oil. So in case you don't know, you don't pour this, flip it around. The high side stays up. It helps pour control down the center. What I do is I pretty much just fill that up, and then you let the oil bubble back down on the inside. And you do this a couple times until it's about, I'd say, 3/4 of the way full for this car, because it is being installed at an angle. Next thing we're gonna do with semi-clean hands or new gloves, depending on what you're doing, take some of the oil that's left on the inside. If you haven't already, coat the threads, and then you wanna coat the sealing surface around the filter. You wanna make sure that that guy has a nice, good ring of oil on it, because that's what helps it seat and get all your torque in there. So make sure there's a nice ring of oil rubbed in there and the threads are nice and coated. Okay, we got our oil filter here. I'm gonna screw this on. So remember, this filter is already kind of oily from the oil we put on it earlier. So this would not be a good time to do this in the dark, one-handed, filming a YouTube video, you know, that sort of stuff. But what I'm gonna do, since it is angled towards the right, my perspective, I'm right-handed, but I'm gonna use my left hand because that'll cause everything to work out just a little bit smoother for me. Let's see if I could do this without completely dropping it. Or my phone. Got it down there. During this time, you got some of that oil leaking back out, so make sure afterwards you clean up really good, because there's nothing worse than finding an oil spot on your driveway, because now you don't know if it's new or if it's old or if it's just poor cleanup. So I went down on this filter till it stopped, just went snug, not much effort at all. You could see it right there. Let's see if I could switch hands here. Now, the old rule of thumb is you're supposed to go 1/8 to 1/4 turn past where snug is. So just grab it. In this case, I'd say I got a little bit more than 1/4 turn out of it. Again, as I started off in the video, filters naturally tighten themselves under heat and vibration. So if you make it really tight, you could break the filter. But if you leave it too loose, it could open up and you lose all the oil in the engine. So it's a fine game to play, but run it down until it's snug, then 1/8 to 1/4 turn till it feels kind of tight. So we're gonna go ahead and fill the oil back up. We're gonna fill it right through here. The key thing, I'm using a nice big oil funnel. So very helpful to use. Don't try to just do a pour into here, otherwise you're gonna use your little overflow lip and get oil all over the place again. Make sure that you run a paper towel or something through this a bunch of time and cleaned up anything, dust, critters, anything like that that might be inside of there. That whatever is on the inside will go directly into your engine, and you do not want that. So let's take the cap off. These are 1/4 turn caps, so just take it, or 1/2 turn, I'm sorry. 1/2 turn, it comes out. Just like that. Set it off over there. And then, see down the inside there? We're gonna put this guy down there. You still wanna pour carefully into these, because if it backs up or you go too fast, it will come out. So you wanna pour it and have a look at the side to see if you see any oil coming out of here, you know, to back off on it. Again, we're gonna do one-handed pouring making YouTube video, so I hope this goes okay. But we're just gonna carefully pour it down inside there. And we're watching that overflow area carefully to make sure we're not overfilling the little inlet area. And remember, all this oil is going up on the top of the motor, so don't just flood the top of your motor and then start the engine directly up. Let it sit for a couple of minutes before you fire up the engine to look for oil leaks. All right, there's a mid-step I'm gonna do here. I put in a whole 5-quart container of oil in the engine now, and there is about a third of a quart put into the filter down there earlier. The engine always has some residual left over, so I wanna make sure that you don't overfill the engine. I wanna make sure the engine's not overfilled, because when you overfill, you could do stuff like push seals out of it that sit just below the oil level. So you wanna make sure that it's correct. So what I'd like to do is I put in basically 5.5 quarts and then check the oil level after a little bit, and then I put in the other half quart if needed. We're all done. I'm gonna put this oil back into the container and then take it off for recycling at the local auto parts place. Because they do oil recycling, please never ever dump this stuff down the drain. It's extremely bad for everything. I wanted to show you the pan though. The car holds about 6 quarts, and this is just about a 6-quart pan. So make sure before you start you have an adequate sized pan to catch this, because as you can see, it was very close to overflowing and then making a mess everywhere. So I'm gonna put my funnel back in here and then carefully pour that all in there. Hopefully I don't make a giant mess. Take it back for recycling. Okay, just fired this up. We're gonna go leak check it in a moment. That's important. While it's running, go out there and make sure that there's no oil coming out of that nice filter that you just put in and everything else. So I just wanted to go through here, make sure everything looks okay. And then we're gonna go in here onto the system menu. Let's see, I believe it's this menu right here. We're gonna hit the up arrow a couple of times. And we're gonna go to, there we go, oil life. And then we're gonna press and hold the reset button in the center, hold it. And there we go, 100%. Hit the arrow back to the left and we're back home. All right, all done. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.